In this game, David Bronstein demonstrated how to attack the king with pawns. First, he started the pawn storm, then once his pawns were blocked, he sacrificed a piece in order to crush the blockade and continue the advance of pawns. And finally, his connected passed pawns, supported by white pieces, finished the black king. So let's see how Bronstein did all that. He played King's Gambit. The opponent, Panov, didn't accept the gambit, playing bishop c5, knight f3, d6, c3, preparing d4, and black played bishop g4, pinning the knight and preventing d4, as d4 is bad now. If white played d4, it would lead to e takes d, c takes d, bishop takes f3. And now if white takes with a pawn, queen would check on h4, and white would lose the right of castles. And if queen takes f3, then white loses the central pawn. That's why after bishop g4, Bronstein took on e5. D takes e, and now queen a4 check, unpinning the knight and threatening to take the e5 pawn next move. That's why bishop d7 attacking the queen. Now white doesn't have time to take on e5. Queen c2, and now knight c6 defending the pawn. And now Bronstein made a very strong move, b4. As you see, the c5 bishop is very active, and it creates serious problems for white, as white cannot castle kingside. However, after b4 move, the bishop is forced to leave this important diagonal, as bishop b6 is bad, because it would be followed by b5, and after knight retreats, white can take on e5 and then play d4, closing the diagonal and castling in the future. That's why black played bishop d6, defending the pawn. Now Bronstein continues the development, bishop c4, knight f6, d3, d3, queen e7, castles. Now it's bad for black to castle kingside, as white has the open f-file, bishop is very active, the knight can be pinned in the future, and then this knight will jump to h4. After exchange on f6, black would be forced to take back with a pawn, so the kingside pawn structure would be damaged. Then the knight from h4 can jump to f5, so white would have a very strong attack on the kingside. That's why black decided to castle queenside. And Bronstein immediately starts the pawn storm, a4. Now black made a move that at first sight looks strange, a5, because it's usually not a good idea to move pawns on the side where your opponent is pawn storming. However, in this position it makes sense, as if white makes the most natural move, b takes a, opening b file and hoping to create a strong pressure on b file, it wouldn't be the case, as black would take with a knight. This knight is placed very good on a5, defending the main weakness on b file, the b7 pawn, and also it is blocking a4 pawn, so this pawn cannot advance, and white wouldn't be able to exert pressure on b file. That's why after a5, Bronstein played b5. Knight b8, knight d2, continuing the development. And now, good move, bishop g4. The idea of this move is to prevent d4, because if white plays d4 now, that would lead to bishop takes f3. Now, knight takes f3 is bad, because knight from d2 is defending the pawn. However, if knight moves, this pawn wouldn't be defended anymore after e takes d. Next move, black would take on e4. That's why after bishop f3 in this case, white would be forced to take with a rook, but it's not good either, because after e takes d, bishop's diagonal opens, and after c takes d, black would sacrifice a bishop in order to start a very strong attack, bishop takes h2, king takes, knight g4 check, and after king g1, very strong move, queen d6, creating multiple threats. First is to check on h2, and after king f1, queen h1 check, followed by queen takes g2 check with a very strong attack. And another threat is queen takes d4 check, and the rook on a1 is hanging. That's why after bishop g4, Bronstein didn't play d4 and played knight b3 instead, attacking the a5 pawn. b6, defending the pawn, bishop e3, developing, knight d7, rook e1, as rook isn't doing anything on a file, as a file is blocked, and bishop e6. The idea is to vacate the g4 square for the knight, from which knight would attack the bishop, and bishop would be either exchanged or would be forced to leave this diagonal. Bishop takes e6, queen takes e6, and king h1 in order to vacate the g1 square for the bishop in case knight g4. Queen e7, knight d2. So as you see, this knight isn't doing much on b3, as all the squares where it can jump are under control of black pawns. That's why Bronstein reroutes this knight to c4, to a much better square. Knight g4, so now you see the idea of king h1 move, bishop g1. Bishop is placed very well on g1 as it continues to attack b6, exert pressure on this diagonal, and also defending the h2 pawn. And black decided to start his own pawn storm, so h5. And knight c4. Here it would be much better for black to play h4, threatening h3 next move. However, black made an inaccurate move, g5. This move at first sight looks very active, however it's a mistake, as the next move will show. And the next move is knight takes d6 check. And now we see why a g5 move was a mistake, as black cannot take with a queen, because queen from e7 is defending g5. So if black takes the knight with queen, it would be followed by knight takes g5, winning a pawn and creating multiple threats. That's why black is forced to take with a pawn. However, this move, c takes d, has serious drawbacks. First of all, now b6 pawn is very vulnerable, as it's not protected by c7 pawn anymore, and the only defender of this pawn is the knight. And the role of bishop increases now, as it is attacking the vulnerability. And however, this b6 is attacked once and defended once. That's why Bronstein reroutes the knight to c4 square in order to attack it for the second time. And also, this move, knight d2, creates a threat which is not easy to spot. For example, if black plays h4, white would play knight c4, attacking b6 the second time, and after the most natural defense, king b7, there is white has a combination winning on the spot. So I offer you to pause the video and try to find these simple but beautiful tactics. So in this case, white would have taken on f7, rook takes f7, and queen cannot take, as it would lead to knight d6 fork. Forking, and then from f7 also forking the rooks. That's why after knight d2, black played f6 in order to prevent all this. Now, in these variations that I just showed, rook cannot take on f7. So, knight c4, attacking the pawn, and king b7. So, what to do now? At first sight, white doesn't have any resources to continue the attack and to exert pressure, as b6 is attacked twice and defended twice. All pawns a4 and b5 pawns are blocked, and black is going to continue the pawn storm h4, h3, creating some threats. However, Bronstein found a very interesting solution to this position in order to crush the blockade and continue the advance of pawns, getting the connected passed pawns and a very strong attack. So I offer you to pause the video again and try to find this solution. So Bronstein sacrificed the bishop. Bishop takes b6, knight takes b6, knight takes a5, check. So for the bishop, Bronstein gets 2 pawns, and what is even more important, a very strong attack, creating unavoidable checkmate threats. And everything happens with tempo here, which is also important, as you will see. So knight takes a5 check after king moves. Knight c6, again with tempo, attacking the queen, and vacating the a5 square, where next move the pawn will advance, again with tempo, attacking a b6 knight. So queen must move, now a5, now knight must move. Of course, white doesn't take the exchange, as white is checkmating here. So b6 check. And black cannot take the knight, because if king takes the knight, it would be followed by queen a4 check, king b7, a6 check. If king takes b6, that would be terrible, as it would open b file, and followed by queen b4 check, and after king retreats, queen b7 checkmate. That's why king b8. However, it doesn't help either, as white would play queen c6, creating checkmate in one threat in 2 different ways: queen b7 checkmate and a7 checkmate, and there is no way black can defend from both of these threats. That's why after b6 check, black didn't take the knight and played king b7. However, it doesn't help either, as a6 check. And now again king takes c6 is bad, as it would lead to queen a4 check. King takes, now b file is open, queen b4 check, and if king retreats, then queen b7 checkmate, and if king takes, then a file is open, so rook a1 checkmate. That's why after a6 black took on b6. And now again b file is open, so black king is doomed. Rook b1 check. And in this position black lost on time. However, the position is lost anyways, and black is checkmated in a couple of moves. For example, if king c6, then check, king c7, rook b7 check, and checkmate next move. And if king c7 in this position, then rook b7 check, and knight a7 checkmate.